My husband and I are currently expecting our second child, and it has put me back in the headspace of what do you have to do to get financially ready for a baby? Because it's been 3 years at least since we did this the last time. So, whether you are expecting or want to be expecting or just think kids are in the future, I highly recommend you go through with me step by step on the things that you should be doing now to prepare yourself so that when you do have that kiddo, not only can you win with money, but you're also in a position to make sure your child succeeds with money as well. All right, let's dive in. This was us 3.5 years ago when we found out we were having our first daughter. And honestly, I'm pretty proud of what we've been able to do with money, not really just for us, but for her. So, for some background information, we've actually positioned her to be worth over $4 million just from our current investing system for her. That's totally separate from us. And the only reason we were able to do that is because we positioned ourselves, took care of ourselves financially first, and it freed us up to create real generational wealth for her. This is really my heart behind covering any of this material because the better in financial position you're in, the more generous you can be and the more impact you can have on generations to come. So again, this is an example. I shared this on social media a long time ago. This was a one account in the three accounts we used to create wealth for her. But the only reason we could even allocate $3,000 towards this after she was born was because of the preparations we did financially before she arrived. So first things first, you really can't prepare unless you actually know like where your cash flow goes. So if you don't have a budget that you actively use every single month, time and time again, it's very difficult for you to figure any of this out. You'll see as I go through the numbers. So you need a zero-based budget. All that means is that every single dollar that's coming into your household has a plan. Simple as that. It can be so easy. This is like a very basic unrealistic budget, right? With a $900 a month rent. But you see the point, right? Income at the top, all the expenses, including savings, including debt payments. What comes out at the bottom is zero. If you don't have this for yourself, you don't know what your emergency fund needs to be. You don't know what income loss you're going to sustain during a parental leave, and you have no idea how your monthly cash outflow will change once this babe is here. So you've got to know this. This is the first step. Now, while you're expecting or in the adoption process or in anticipation of an immediate arrival of a baby, here's what you should do. Step one, I put maternity leave, really all it's parental leave, hopefully. That both partners have the opportunity to be home and bonding with baby. Okay. So you need to call and figure out how much money am I going to get while I'm on leave. Now, the world of medicine is notorious for being horrible here. Like many medical professionals get very minimal pay on their leave, if any. So find this out early. Remember, FMLA does not guarantee compensation. It guarantees that your job will be held in your absence. You need to know, are you getting paid through your employer? Is that a short-term disability policy if you're not? And did you sign up for the short-term disability policy, right? Because if you don't have it, you don't get the coverage. As a side note, there's usually a PDF, if it's short-term disability, telling you what your benefit is, and it will normally have a little asterisk, like, we will cover up to 60% of your earnings for 90 days, asterisk. Call the company because many times they do not consider pregnancy or giving birth the same type of disability as other types of disabilities. And my particular short term disability company did not, in fact, pay me 60% of earnings as advertised. It was actually capped at like $1,000 or something. So you need to make sure you call, find out the cap, if there's a weekly cap or a monthly cap, and actually figure out what is my compensation. Knowing your monthly cash flow needs and what you will get compensated is the only way to make a financial plan for this. And if you have two partners, you need to both make the same call and figure out in total What is going to be the loss in income? Now, again, review your medical insurance. Do you have a high deductible plan? Are you on a PPO? What can you expect to pay? And if you are on a high deductible plan, do you have money in your HSA so that you have some type of allocation specific for healthcare savings? Or do you need to have those savings elsewhere? You're going to determine your anticipated medical expenses. This is really old data, guys, but you can tell like the average cost of a vaginal birth is 4,000, average cost of a cesarean is 5,000. Look at your deductible, figure out what you can anticipate. Actually, for this pregnancy, which my OBGYN office did not do for my last pregnancy, they gave me a one-sheeter total cost like summary of what I should anticipate for the whole pregnancy and birth. So that may be something that you can receive now that was maybe less common a few years ago, to have a very good idea of like, what are you going to pay for this? Now, figure out what it is you're going to need to buy. Most people start here, right? They skip the parental leave, they skip the boring insurance, medical stuff, and they're like, what do I need to buy? What do I need for the nursery? What do I need for the crib? Just remember that the price spectrum here will vary so dramatically, right? Like you can buy a crib that's $1,000. You can buy a crib on Facebook Marketplace for $100. Like same thing with strollers, same thing with wagons, same things with all of it. If you are someone who's planning on having like showers or registries, you might consider how that will factor in, but you need to have an idea of the all-in cost of the stuff that you want to buy. You shouldn't just start the buying process and be like, well, we'll figure out later how much we spent. Plan it out. You don't have to plan out like every box of diapers, but the big ticket stuff, the car seat, the stroller, the crib, the furniture, plan that out. Figure out how much it's going to cost you. This is a biggie. Figure out how much your childcare is going to cost. And a lot of daycares require a hefty deposit. So figure out what that's going to be. Go and get some quotes, figure out what's going to work for your guys' lifestyle, your needs, your goals, and see like, what are we going to spend here? This is going to be the biggest change in your monthly cash outflow going forward. Again, you don't know if you can even afford it unless you have a budget now, because you have no idea how much is coming in and going out. So now we have our total expenses, right? We have our missed income, we have our medical costs, we have the cost of the major baby stuff, and we have the child care deposit. Those are all of the things that are going to be taking money out of your wallet before baby comes. Again, get a quote for this part too. We often forget we're going to have to add a kiddo to medical insurance, so figure out what that's going to cost. If you both have insurance as an option, you may see if it's cheaper on one versus the other. And then again, start looking for a pediatrician. So here's some sample numbers. Assuming you would get some compensation on parental leave, you can see I have a sum here for missed income. Like let's say you normally earn $3,000 a month. Again, unrealistic example number. You're going to get paid $2,000 a month instead. So over 3 months, you lose $3,000 in income. Here you have your medical deductible minus what you have in your HSA account. And then you have this amount here. You have the cost of your baby items, guys. This can range from like 1,500 to 15,000. It just depends on you, your taste, but be reasonable and keep in mind like you need to retire, you need to have savings, you need to have a student loan plan. And if you're spending 15 grand on baby stuff, but like you have 10 grand invested and you're 30, you're hustling a little bit backwards there. And maybe your kiddo needs some stuff from a consignment shop so that they don't have to feed you when you're 85 and you can afford to feed yourself. Then we have the cost of the child care deposit. You add all that up, it's a big number, right? Nobody said it was going to be small, but at least you know, right? At least you know. Then you create your budgets. So what I actually did and what I'll do again is go pre-baby budget month by month all the way up until due date of how are we going to fit in all this stuff. Like what are we saving each month towards the missed income? What are we saving each month towards the medical cost? The 1,500 in this example, like are we going to just do 500 a month for 3 months and like buy the things spaced out, or how are we going to spread that? But by planning it out in advance, you can make sure that this whole number can actually be incorporated in the pregnancy or the waiting months so that when baby comes, everything's been spaced out and covered. The worst thing you can do is create yourself credit card debt in this process so that now you have a new baby, you're on no sleep, you're on less income, and you're getting charged high interest debt in the process. So again, pre-baby budgets, then you actually go through and do parental leave budgets too. You figure out, okay, on the parental leave, maybe we can like reduce some expenses, then see based on the reduced income we're going to have, like do we need savings every single month to sustain ourselves? Do we not? Are we going to be able to get by without doing that? But by planning this out, you'll position yourself to not be stressed, right? Because when the time comes, you'll already know that you can get by. You won't have to be like stressed worrying about it. And like, trust me, if you are a new parent, the last thing you need to do is worry about money when you're getting 2 hours of sleep at a time and you're physically exhausted and all those things. So make sure you plan out this piece. And then at least 1 month post baby budget too, when you're back to work. Why? Childcare, right? Like if you guys have both decided to go back to work in some capacity and you have some type of childcare, part-time or full-time, figure out what that looks like before you do it. Before you pay the deposit even and commit to doing some type of specific daycare, like does it actually work in your cash flow? And does it work in a way that you can still retire, that you can still pay your student loan payment, right? All these other things still have to happen in the background. So if you are not yet expecting, you have a little bit more time in your planning and you're thinking like, okay, I want to have a baby in the next year, 2 years. What should I be doing now? 1000% pay off all of your credit card debt, all of it in entirety. High interest debt, which I will say loosely, anything with an interest rate above 10% will just crush you financially. Doesn't matter what phase of your financial life you're in, you just can't tolerate it. You're not going to create investment returns that exceed it 99% of the time. And it just has to go. So get rid of it and build the habits now with a zero-based budget so that you never have to face it again. Then create your emergency fund. Again, you don't know how much your emergency fund should be unless you know your monthly cash outflow because your emergency fund is based on your expenses. It's 3 to 6 months of your expenses. Well, if you have no idea how much money you spend every month, you have no idea what your expenses are. So, step one is to figure that out and then go build that emergency fund. We already talked about the sinking fund, right? The baby fund of all that stuff. If you at least have your emergency reserves in the background, that takes some of that pressure off, right? And then again, we already went through all of the expenses associated with having this baby. So you can start the sinking fund for it as early as you want. Now, like example, you could use an HSA or start building that up if you're on a high deductible plan in anticipation of costs. I personally had a locked and loaded health savings account when we had our first baby, and I used $0 out of it because all my money's invested. And I feel so passionately about the tax benefits of investing in that account that I made a separate sinking fund and didn't spend a single HSA dollar on baby expenses because I wanted the long-term growth. You also need to have an overall debt strategy and investing strategy, right? Like you have to be able to retire. If you don't invest at least 20% of your income as a medical professional, it's highly unlikely that you're on track for even the most basic retirement, working until 65 or 67. So you need to have that in place. You also need to have a debt strategy, meaning I'm not saying like, oh, pay off all your student loans before you have kids. That's nuts. But make sure that you know what the heck you're doing because again, the sleep deprived state on 2 hours is not the best time to try to run the numbers between taxable loan forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness, right? Choose these things now, have a defined plan now, and make sure that it fits with the investing piece. Because if you know your student loan strategy and you know your investing strategy, those are two huge determinants of your cash outflow. And that allows you to create that post-baby budget with childcare, with the extra medical costs, with the extra cost of diapers, right? Where you know it all fits. But if you leave these big, super important things out of the mix, then you put yourself in a situation where you're like, yeah, we can totally afford that daycare if we work till we're 82, right? Which is not the spot you want to be in. And then quick reminders after kid is born, you have to do like birth certificate, social security card. You need life insurance. Please don't skip this. If you don't have 10 to 12 times your annual income in term life insurance, you're not adequately insured. That 1X policy that you get from your work, that's your funeral fund, okay? That's small potatoes. You need real, genuine life insurance, not whole life, not an IUL. You need term life insurance. You also need a will or estate plan. I have content on this elsewhere. I could talk about that for 45 minutes alone, but minors need cared for if you die. Minors can't control assets. And so you need a will or an estate plan to make sure that your children are cared for should something horrible happen to you. And then here's the fun part. You get to invest for the kid if and only if your own retirement is on track. Now, I'm going to link after this to a whole video I have about using a 3-account system to make a multimillionaire kid. So you can watch that next. But don't forget, all of this is predicated on the fact that you have to be able to retire at a reasonable age with a reasonable wage, right? So that you can keep your same lifestyle, go to the same restaurants, take the same vacations, and enjoy yourself after a long life of working hard in medicine.